Welcome back to Thought for the Day. If you've been following my thoughts this week, you'll know that I've been talking about 5 people who have influenced me for good from my early years onwards. Yesterday I introduced you to a character who was rather a rough diamond, but he had quite unexpectedly encountered the Lord while en route to a local greyhound stadium. The scripture that meant most to him was the encouragement to us all from Ephesians to put on the whole armour of God. And his subsequent way of life was a powerful demonstration of the truth and the power in those words. But the person I want to remember today could not have been more different. He was a priest and an academic, a New Testament scholar by the name of Christopher Evans, who I was extremely fortunate to have as my tutor in my final year as an undergraduate at King's College London, and then as my supervisor when undertaking some further study a few years later. After university, he had trained to become a Church of England priest, but following a few brief years of parish work, his academic gifts inevitably led him permanently back to college and university teaching, where he was in his element. As a lecturer and communicator, he was head and shoulders above most of the other teachers at the college. To retain the attention of a packed lecture theatre of students week after week, and to get rousing applause at the end of a demanding series of lectures is no mean achievement. Professor Christopher Evans was virtually the only one of his colleagues who could actually achieve this. He made New Testament studies interesting and fascinating, even exciting. He asked unusual and searching questions. He encouraged his readers and his students to read the words of Scripture with fresh, questioning eyes, to think for ourselves and not rely overmuch on established opinions, even if it came from acknowledged experts. But his approach was not just academic. As a clergyman, he appreciated that theology was not just for the experts, but that it had a responsibility to explain and clarify matters for the ordinary Christian or the interested inquirer. His churchmanship was what we would nowadays describe as liberal Anglo-Catholic. By contrast, my church background was conservative evangelical. Despite this culture shock, I found his approach refreshing and enlightening, and I learned so much from him which has stood me in good stead as, in some small way, I've been involved in preaching and teaching in my life since. Without just singing core beliefs, under his influence I tried to be open to new insights and truth in the Bible, and where necessary to make room for those fresh insights. As an excellent communicator, Christopher contributed in his heyday to various BBC programmes. At one stage, the BBC broadcast some services on a Sunday evening, and I recall one in particular where he preached a short sermon on the opening words of Paul's letter to the Colossians, chapter 3. If then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. In his typical style, he approached the verse side on, considering the way people get their highs, their kicks in life. This was the 1960s, the age of experimentation in all kinds of new experiences, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as the era is sometimes characterized. Though I must admit, I never saw any of it. But he then went on to point out that there is another way to experience a high, which is to set our minds on things above, not earthly things. And this offers a different kind of satisfaction and a different set of values by which we are called to live as Christians. It was an interesting way of looking at the passage, and it has added to my appreciation of the letter to the Colossians, which has always been one of my favourites among the letters of Paul. To set our minds on things above, not on earthly things, is a fine motto for all of us to have in life. And as the text goes on to explain, it offers us future prospects as well, an eternal hope. When Christ, who is our life, appears, then we also will appear with him in glory. And tomorrow, in my final thought for the week, I'll introduce you to yet another character who has been a lasting influence on me. And this one will, I think, surprise you. Thank you.